About 4 years ago, I asked myself a question. What compels humans to seek the darkest parts of humanity in art? Is it curiosity, catharsis, a need to understand ourselves? I can understand why a person likes horror movies. Ooh, it's a spooky basement. What's hiding down there? Ah, it's Bush-era trauma. One of my favorite books is a sweet coming-of-age novel called Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian is a truly fucked up book about American imperialism and God and stuff. But to men in their 20s, it's basically eat, pray, love. What is so mysterious and attractive about disturbing fiction? Well, 4 years ago, I asked myself this question and naively embarked upon a challenge that I thought would make a fun, quick video. Yeah. In the process, I read a lot of stuff that made me uncomfortable, sick to my stomach, unbearably sad, and honestly, some of it made me laugh, but how does one go about finding these dark, upsetting books, right? Lists. So many lists. Iceberg videos, Quora, Reddit, Twitter. This is a field well trod, and these are the books that come up again and again. Some great YouTubers have discussed some of these books, Nick Spheres, Criminology, just to name a couple. Some that I've picked up have defined transgressive literature for decades. Some are new additions to the canon. But I didn't want to just pick out a bunch of splatterpunk and call it a day. No, I wanted to test the range of depravity, and that range will differ depending what kind of reader you are. I made a video a couple years ago about Butcher's Crossing, and I controversially said it was more disturbing than Blood Meridian. Well, to me it is. Where Blood Meridian's violence is abstract and aestheticized, almost surreal, Butcher's Crossing very realistically describes the slaughter of hundreds of buffalo. It's a matter of perspective, so I guarantee a couple of my choices here will have some of you hardcore readers go, psh, that's nothing. It goes without saying that I'll be touching upon some of the most disgusting, horrifying topics ever. I'm going to be careful about how I phrase things, and I won't just list every atrocity in these books because that would get, well, that'd be impossible and that'd be very boring. There's going to be light spoilers for some of these books. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty detail of some of these more disgusting books, but it's possible YouTube will limit views or age restrict or demonetize this video nonetheless. So if you like hearing me talk about books like this, I run a book club you can join for $2 a month on Patreon. We're reading The Count of Monte Cristo, and we just finished The Dispossessed. I read these books all in order of how disturbing I expected them to be. Now I'm going to rank them in order of how disturbing they actually were personally to me. So without further ado, book number 1. You know, 4 years ago, I wanted to use the Mr. Incredibles horror meme template for each of these books. I realize now this is an incredibly dated meme, but, you know, I'm going to do it anyway. A little life. A drag queen! This isn't disturbing at all, you say. This is some bullshit TikTok slop. You may recognize this book from all the videos of young women crying as they finish it. Do we seek disturbing, upsetting fiction for emotional catharsis? That's what I wanted to know when I chose this book. This book was a massive success when it came out in 2015, and it's still a phenomenon, though it suffers continual backlash. I could make a whole video about this fucking book. And I did. Almost 4 years ago. God, I was so innocent back then. I didn't realize how long this was going to take. Did this novel bring me to tears? No, not even close. Did it move me? Sort of. Did it disturb me? Absolutely, but not in the way you might be thinking. Because I severely underrated this book. It is way more disturbing and graphic than I ever expected. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara begins as a story of 4 young men hanging out and growing up in the greatest city on earth, New York City. There's no reference to when this book takes place, which gives it this unmoored, unspecific sense of reality. Willem, Jude, JB, and Malcolm are the 4 protagonists until they aren't. The book eventually focuses on Jude, who is a mysterious character with a past full of extreme trauma, and Willem, who is an actor. The other 2 guys sort of just drift out of existence as if Yanagihara got bored with them. Here's the thing, this book is well written. Yanagihara can write a sentence and even deploy an effective simile or two. I was hooked for like half of this book, which is impressive. I mean, it's basically 800 pages of the worst things happening to the nicest people. It's hard not to feel devastated when you read hundreds of pages about self-harm and child abuse. The problem is, and this is going to be a recurring theme in this video, I think, when does it become too much, or even when does it become sort of implausible? Light spoilers ahead for this book, well, really for all of these books, I guess. Jude cuts himself. He self-harms in very extreme ways, and a lot of this book is about how his friends try to help him, try keeping him clinging to purpose in life, even when Jude suffers depression and chronic pain. We follow them for like 30 years in their lives and jump back and forth between the present and Jude's childhood, where we learn he was an orphan and he was abused over and over and over again by a number of men. He gets trafficked. He gets captured by an evil doctor. He gets run over with a car. It truly sucks to read about. It is very graphic, yet at some point you start to notice the writer like the hand of God just reaching down to tip the scales against this poor human. What is the purpose of all this suffering? Even when things start looking up for Jude, another random tragedy occurs and all this progress gets washed away. I'm not saying you can't make books about trauma without depicting that trauma being confronted and, if not healed, addressed seriously. But after a certain point, it becomes implausible, and I start wondering, like, what is the goal here? What is the point of all of the suffering? By the end of the book, I was legitimately pissed. I didn't only feel emotionally manipulated, but I felt annoyed that all 800 pages of this book basically led up to Jude finally taking his life as an act of mercy. The book is saying, like, you know, some people can't be fixed. It has this edgy teenage view of mental health. Maybe if my therapist said I should just die, he'd be telling me the truth. Look, this isn't speculation or me placing my own moral expectations on a work of fiction. In an interview, Yanagihara shared her views on therapy and on this book. One of the things that makes me most suspicious about the field of talk therapy is its insistence that life is always the answer. Every other medical specialty devoted to the care of the seriously ill recognizes that at some point the doctor's job is to help the patient die, that there are points at which death is preferable to life. This is ultimately what makes this work so disturbing to me. It confronted my ideas about mental health and how I value life in ways I never expected and in ways I did not like. I disagree with Yanagihara's views, and I felt kind of angry getting to the end of this book only to see that perspective shown in the narrative. If you want a great critical breakdown of A Little Life, Owl Criticism has a really good video appropriately titled Euthanasia Fanfiction. Although number 1 on my expected pain list, I have to place A Little Life at number 6 for actual pain. It truly pissed me off. For my next book, I found something maybe even more popular than A Little Life, and it happened to be written by one of my favorite authors. Book number 2 is another basic-ass disturbing book. Where's the actual messed up stuff you say? And to that viewer, I say, reflect upon yourself. I mean, this even has Oprah's book club on it. If your mom has read The Road, how disturbing could it actually be? Well, I thought the same thing too until I read Blood Meridian and learned what Cormac McCarthy was capable of. 2006's The Road is a post-apocalyptic father-son story. The end. It's very simple. The writing is spare, sometimes like a screenplay, but with this terrific arcane language and philosophy. Dark of the invisible moon, the nights now only slightly less black. By day, the banished sun circles the earth like a grieving mother with a lamp. The novel is no doubt very distressing, but it's also a kind of thrilling and quick read. McCarthy, whether he intended to or not, wrote a bestseller. The mother of this story takes her own life after an unnamed disaster, likely a nuclear war, and the father and son simply try to survive. I want to be with you. You can't. Please. You can't. You have to carry the fire. There's no hope in this world. There are cannibals. Plants and animals are dying. Yet there's this constant refrain. There's hope when the father insists they must survive. They have to survive simply because they carry the flame. There's a strange mysticism here, a belief that there's something eternal and worth preserving in human beings and in all life on earth. Yes, the book is painful, but the darkness makes the light more powerful, you know? It's kind of a philosophical 180 flip from Yanagihara's pessimism. So, is it a great book? One of the best in the stack? Absolutely. Was it disturbing to me? I think I rated it appropriately at number 2. Moving from spare, clean prose to maximalist postmodern art project, it's amazing you can even call this a novel. Book number 3. Here we go, shit is starting to get serious. House of Leaves, depending on your opinion, is either an overhyped shitpost of a horror novel or a masterpiece of postmodern fiction. I've seen people treat this like an object of evil, like it's the book from Evil Dead. I think part of the mystique is that it looks weird. It's a weird book. What is with this formatting? They could have put stuff here. Why isn't there stuff here? Are they stupid? This book seems daunting and impenetrable, but I think at its core it's fairly simple, but it has the trappings of something complex. I have a lot of complicated feelings about this book. On one level, it is profoundly disturbing, especially in a Lovecraftian and or liminal spaces, backrooms kind of way. It's about a spooky house that keeps changing, that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. No one knows why. The premise is extraordinary. It's all these other layers that I don't love. Okay, breaking down House of Leaves on a very basic level. At level 1, you've got the Navidson Record, a documentary which does or does not exist, which is about this weird house. This is the meat of the story, but this is all filtered through level 2. Zampano, an old man who has written about the Navidson Record, effort as an academic would. The language here is kind of a satire of bad academic writing, though the story is so fundamentally well executed, it's nevertheless pretty riveting. Zampano went crazy, and his manuscript is being edited by a man named Johnny Truant. This is level 3, who is not an academic but is going through a number of mental health issues, to say the least. Johnny is an intrusive editor, and a huge chunk of this book follows his digressions while he gets laid and has depressive episodes. At the top level, level 4, there's another layer of editors who are far less intrusive. So the book offers a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I found it sort of a mixed bag. Like, yeah, it's fun to turn the page upside down and skim a bunch of made-up book references, but what I found most pleasurable was its existence as an art object. It's very pretty and fun to look at. It's a great example of ergodic literature, which engages readers in unique ways, sometimes like a video game or solving a puzzle or engaging non-linearly. House of Leaves throws everything at the wall. Is it maximalist art or a huge gimmick? I feel like I'm caught in the middle. There is complex, dense writing out there that is challenging, that I love reading simply because the language is beautiful. My issue with House of Leaves is that the language is intentionally kind of bad. It's a parody of clunky academic writing. It might also be a parody of like bad Kerouac ripoffs. On a sentence-by-sentence level, I just kind of hated my reading experience. That's probably what Danielewski was going for. As for the disturbing elements here, it's really more about your imagination. Are the meta elements freaking you out, making you question what you're reading? Are you scared of vast empty spaces, isolation, and darkness? Yeah, this may scare you. At its best, when it's describing the Navidson documentary, this is some of the best horror fiction you'll read. The problem is the other 500 pages. So for all of these reasons, House of Leaves stays at number 3. My predictions have been pretty good so far, I think. These books are all pretty America-centric, but for our next 2 books, we will be traveling to Japan. Book number 4 is No Longer Human, published in 1948, was author Osamu Dazai's final novel, released a month after he took his own life. Like A Little Life, it has strangely become a social media sensation. There are a few reasons for this, I think. Yozo, the main character, feels incredibly modern. He's alienated from society, feels unable to connect to others, and pities his circumstances even though he comes from a wealthy family. It's not difficult to imagine him browsing 4chan at 3 a.m. every night. As a child, I had absolutely no notion of what others, even members of my own family, might be suffering or what they were thinking. I was aware only of my own unspeakable fears and embarrassments. Before anyone realized it, I had become an accomplished clown, a child who never spoke a single truthful word. The book is like a collection from his journals, so we're immersed in his headspace. It's implied that he was essayed as a boy. As a young man, he constantly self-sabotages and hurts those around him. Whenever he gets close to someone, he ends up feeling unworthy of the affection and projects his insecurities onto others, especially in the way he views women. Women sleep so soundly, they seem to be dead. Who knows? Women may live in order to sleep. These and various other generalizations were products of an observation of women since boyhood days. But my conclusion was that though women appear to belong to the same species as man, they are actually quite different creatures. And these incomprehensible, insidious beings have, fantastic as it seems, always looked after me. It's a miserable downfall going from disappointment to disappointment. Light spoilers ahead, by the way. Eventually he gets addicted to morphine, and in the book's most shocking passage, passively witnesses his partner getting SA'd, doing nothing to intervene. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I struggled to get through this book. It's a slim volume, but every time I picked it up, I felt heavy and full of resentment. I'm saying that despite the extreme nature of Yozo's situation, there is a lot to relate to here, especially in an age where social media algorithms are training us to loathe ourselves and others even more. It was hard at times to separate the thoughts of the author from the thoughts of the main character. How much of this loathing for humanity was authentic? But the whole novel kind of unlocked itself to me in its final pages. In an epilogue, we see the POV of the person who found this journal, and he seeks people who actually knew Yozo. And breaking free of Yozo's POV is like a breath of fresh air. We can finally see Yozo separate from his own self-hate, as a flawed human being like anyone else. If everything written in these notebooks is true, I probably would have wanted to put him in an insane asylum myself if I were his friend. It's his father's fault, she said unemotionally. The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing, and if only he hadn't drunk. No, even though he did drink, he was a good boy, an angel. It's a tough, deeply upsetting novel. I'd say No Longer Human belongs at number 5. Childhood trauma has been a through line through many of these books, the sense of absolute vulnerability and the terror of an inescapable past. The next book here exemplifies this in startling, creative, and surreal ways. For book number 5, I chose Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. Came out in 2018, and it's about a young girl neglected by her parents, and she comes to believe that she's an alien. you know, she has a childhood romance with her cousin, which ultimately fractures her extended family, and she murders her abuser, her teacher, at the behest of her stuffed animal, Piute. Piute was the one who'd given me my magical objects and powers. He was from planet Poppin' Popopia. The magic police had found out that Earth was facing a crisis and had sent him on a mission to save our planet. And this is just the setup. We flash forward in time to Natsuki as an adult, still firmly convinced she is a real-life alien on Earth who must pretend to be normal to be part of the factory. I was still expected to become a component for the factory. It was like a never-ending jail sentence. I thought I probably wouldn't ever be able to be an effective factory component. My body was still broken, and even after becoming an adult, I wasn't able to have sex. Fans of Yorgos Lanthimos, this is the novel for you. This book is twisted, but darkly funny and sincere in its anger and frustration at a society that dismisses children and forces men and women into a factory of life and death. The grown-ups who did what society wanted of them were shaken by those of us who did not. The grown-ups had become anesthetized and seemed unable to remember what life had been like before. They all seemed to be under some kind of spell. Natsuki is relatable until things go pretty far, as of course they must. Light spoilers ahead. The story devolves, becomes surreal, involves necrophilia and cannibalism. It's a lot, but it's stylized and wrapped in this childlike POV. The emotional component is very upsetting, but it becomes a fantasia of surreal violence. I mean, how do you react to a line like this? When having his eyelid chewed, my husband muttered, "Since coming here, I sometimes wonder whether there really are any true Earthlings at all." A funny, startling, and quietly moving book about people who reject society and how far that can really go. I think Earthlings is number 4. Continuing the theme of childhood horror, the next book came highly recommended. This book is on every list. Some people love it, some people despise it, but I had to see what it was all about. So book number 6 is... This might look like a fairly unassuming horror novel, something Stephen King adjacent, right? He even has a quote on it. I was entirely unprepared for this book. Calling it a work of horror or even a disturbing book isn't really doing justice here. It is a deeply fucked up psychological portrait of evil. The extremes, but also the structure of evil and the banality of it. A lot of the books on this list upset me, grossed me out for a little while maybe. This book though, this book is still with me. For several days I couldn't get the stench of this book off of me. For weeks I kept thinking about it, not specific horrifying moments, though it has plenty of those, but the feeling of passive evil, of standing aside watching atrocities unfold while you do nothing. Some say this is a work of cheap exploitation. I don't know, and I really can't say. What I can say is that this novel challenged me emotionally. It's competently written, if kind of plain, and it understands dehumanization and the vulnerabilities of childhood better than maybe any other book I've read. That's not to say it's perfect. The Girl Next Door came out in 1989 and at some point had this as a book cover, one of the most tasteless publishing choices I've ever seen. It's narrated by David, who is recalling his serene 1950s childhood. Kids roam free, hang out by the creek, play games all day. His best friend lives next door, and he often hangs out at his house with his mom, Ruth, who is the cool mom, you know, who she even lets them drink beers. These kids are probably like around 12. Ruth has 3 kids and soon takes in 2 more when her 2 nieces come to live with her. David quickly develops a crush on the older of the 2 girls, Meg. But pretty soon David starts noticing signs that all isn't right at Ruth's house. Meg and her sisters are treated like servants, and David starts witnessing acts of abuse and humiliation. Ruth is deteriorating mentally, and though she sort of represents evil, the story is more about the children adapting to this power structure, becoming accomplices in the abuse done to Meg. After that day, I was like an addict, and my drug was knowing what was possible, knowing how far it could go, where they'd dare to take it all. It was always they. I stood outside, or felt I did, from both Meg and Susan on one side and the Chandlers on the other. I'd participated in nothing directly. I'd watched, never touched, and that was all. As long as I maintained that stance, I could imagine I was, if not exactly blameless, not exactly culpable either. David does his best to stay a passive observer, and he must contend as an adult and as a child with his complicity as Meg is brutally tortured, essayed, burned, beaten, cut, and ultimately killed. It's a slow-motion car crash, and it's a deeply angry book. You feel the anger through the page. It's made all the worse knowing that this book is based loosely upon the real-life murder of Sylvia Likens. It's incredible that Jack Ketchum pulled this off, in my opinion, without making a cheap exploitation horror novel. Not everyone agrees with me, but I found genuine emotional depth here. This is what good, dark, challenging writing can do. It isn't just a list of shocking, horrible stuff. When done right, you can see the world differently. This book made me think of the Nazis who were just following orders and of the power structures that continue atrocities throughout the world today. This book would top the list if I were to stop right now, but unfortunately there are more books to talk about, so it's at number 9. Moving on now to book number 7. I'm going to let you know right now that this is the last conventional novel on this list before we get to the really weird, extreme stuff. Yet, as we've seen earlier, shock and horror doesn't just come from blood and guts. It comes from psychology, from the extremes of human emotion. And this book explores those extremes like nothing else I've ever seen. Johnny Got His Gun is a famous anti-war novel from legendary screenwriter, communist, and New Mexico drug lord Dalton Trumbo. It's pretty straightforward. A U.S. soldier fighting in World War I wakes up in a hospital bed, unable to see or hear anything. As he tries to construct what is happening, he recalls his idyllic youth, his first love, his best friends. The flashbacks were to make kind of boring, and they felt obligatory so as to give this guy some character, but really he represents the everyman, the average Joe who gets tossed into the meat grinder of war. It takes time, but Joe comes to realize that not only can he no longer see or hear, he doesn't have eyes anymore. He doesn't have ears. He doesn't have arms or legs, and he no longer has a mouth, tongue, or nose. All he has is a few areas where he can still feel touch, like his neck and his forehead. I can't stand it. Scream, move, shake something, make a noise, any noise. I can't stand it. Oh, no, no, no. Please, I can't. Please, no. Somebody come. Help me. I can't lie here forever like this until maybe years from now I die. I can't. Nobody can. It isn't possible. He's a prisoner, trapped in his thoughts. He can't even explain who he is. He learns to tell the passage of time based on the vibration of nurses coming and going and the warmth of the sun on his cheek. All he has are his thoughts and memories. When he tries to communicate through Morse code by banging his head up and down, they just sedate him, thinking he's in distress. It's truly a horrifying scenario depicted with psychological realism. This could feel excessive if Trumbo weren't clearly and painstakingly laying out an emotional argument against war. By the end, Joe is screaming at us, the readers. Take me wherever there are parliaments and diets and congresses and chambers of statesmen. I want to be there when they talk about honor and justice and making the world safe for democracy and 14 points and the self-determination of peoples. I want to be there to remind them I haven't got a tongue to stick into the cheek I haven't got either. This book came out in 1939 but became a cultural artifact when the US entered World War II. It became hugely popular with young people and was rediscovered in the 1960s, recontextualized at the height of the Vietnam War. It's an unforgettable book, but incredibly bleak. The week I read this, I had to read like a fun crime novel every night just to rinse my brain out. As for extreme, disturbing literature, it's a great example of something with artistic merit. Johnny Got His Gun remains at number 7. But let's move away from artistic merit, shall we? I felt obligated to represent splatterpunk on this list, which is a genre of extreme horror, and this pick seemed a relatively popular example. And the cover just really stuck out to me. I mean, this looks extreme. This looks dangerous. Book number 8 is... Warning, this is an extreme horror novel. It is not intended for those who are shocked or easily offended. Watch out, liberals. You might be thinking, damn, this book is so extreme they had to put a label on it. No, that's the cover. And it's foreshadowing the unfortunate truth that this book is all empty provocation. Sick but asterisk stirred is a novel by Matt Shaw that is, like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, about the desperation to survive following a nuclear apocalypse. And that's where the similarities end. It takes true skill and mastery of craft to be able to make a reader feel any emotion, even disgust. You think, hey, just describe gross stuff and it will gross people out. Not necessarily. If I say, once upon a time, Michael Myers jumped out of a closet and stabbed you, you're not scared. Where's the build-up, the atmosphere? We need to feel like we're there. What does your character want, and why is Michael Myers still in the closet? It's 2026. What I'm saying is very basic. Good horror writing is about good writing. Now read this brief passage from this book and tell me what you feel. He plunged the knife into the meat's leg. The meat screamed. The meat always screamed. Again, the first time we'd a meal as much, I found it off-putting. So did sister. Besides the glaring mistake and bad grammar, what do you feel? Probably nothing, right? That's this entire book. I honestly feel kind of stupid for thinking this would rank number 8 on this list beside Jack Ketchum and No Longer Human. This novel follows a group of people who assume they are related, father, mother, sister, brother, that's their names, that's what they call each other, but they have no memory of their life before the apocalypse. They're cannibals, so they eat people, okay, great. They just kind of grab people who come to their house because they never venture far because there are zombie-like creatures roaming around. Also, the family, they all have sex with each other, which is is the main disturbing element here, and boy, does the author fixate on this. You owed me. Owed you? Owed you what? The orgasm you denied me. Have you heard yourself? Jesus, what have we turned into? What? I don't even know who we are anymore. I'm your sister, and you're my brother. A great fucking brother at that. Everything's so wrong. This is dialogue you will read over and over and over again. None of it feels psychologically interesting because the reason they are so hungry for human flesh is probably because of like the nuclear bomb or something they're drinking. Everything starts off okay, and then it changes when the food vanishes. Before you know it, you're killing people, eating them, and f***ing your family as a dessert. It's all very vague, and spoiler alert, the twist is very predictable. Eventually, our protagonist ventures into the surrounding area only to discover that it's all a government experiment to simulate what might happen if the world ended. Apparently, everyone starts eating raw human flesh. Like they don't even bother trying to cook it or season it or anything. Anyways, the protagonist also learns that his family isn't related at all to each other, so incest allegations avoided. But this revelation makes him so jaded about society that he returns to his fake home and continues eating random people just because. It's not good. It's not even disturbing. Most of it reads like bad porn. He uses parentheses to excess, and the descriptions just look at this. Trees were swaying in whatever winds were stirring on the day you happened to look upon them, full of life as they danced from side to side, occasionally shaking free a leaf or two. The texture was chewy, uncooked ham. I couldn't help but wish there was some gas in the house, which we could have cooked some of the meat. So they couldn't cook the meat because they didn't have gas. Okay, well, what about salt? Things are so bad, we just gotta eat human flesh raw. Sick but asterisk sturds is a joke. It takes a spot at number 1, the lowest on the list, but it doesn't really belong on the list. I'm sorry. This next book, however, definitely does. Book number 9, as we near the end of our journey, is... When someone says extreme horror, I will think of this book immediately for the rest of my life. This is like a Hieronymus Bosch painting on steroids. It is grotesque, disgusting, shocking, surreal. But is it good? You know, I don't even know if good or bad belongs in the equation. It exists. It largely does what I think it's trying to do. Is it a worthwhile read? For me, no. Is it effective at making you sick? 100%. I will say, going from Sick Bastards to this is like going from an episode of Family Guy to Bergman's The Seventh Seal. There are images in this. There are tastes and smells in this book I literally wish I could scrub from my brain. At the same time, it is incredibly stupid. The dialogue is awful, and again, it's just... It's very dumb. It's about a lonely young man who lives with his mom, a sadistic fat woman who he lovingly calls the hag beast. It's important to note how disgustingly fat she is. The book really wants to emphasize that. She's fat. Be grossed out. She's fat. She force feeds him uncooked mystery meat every night, and the author really makes you suffer with every bite. She sat opposite him and slopped chunks of undercooked meat onto his plate. The oil that soaked it was flecked with something that looked like phlegm. There are things in this book that, if I described them here, would get this video removed in 2 seconds. So I'm going to be careful. Our protagonist, Stephen, gets a job at a slaughterhouse where he discovers his co-workers are ritualistically the cows in the most extreme ways. Stephen, guided by a man named Cripps, comes to enjoy the power he feels from murder and partakes in it all. Stephen starts to build confidence, defies his mother, and starts cooking dinner instead in an effort to slowly kill her. And what does he make for dinner every night? His own shit, which they both eat. Kind of a crazy power move, right? While Stephen is trying his best to kill his mom, he's forming a relationship with a woman in his building who is obsessed with dissecting animals, and he learns about talking cows who live in the sewers who are trying to murder Cripps. Sounds like a lot, right? Well, there's so much more. But what makes this book interesting rather than a boring list of extreme horror is the psychology of our protagonist. He wasn't like the people on the streets. They lived so perfectly. They knew exactly what to do to be happy, and they did it without even having to think. And the TV beamed their lives into his head as dreams. He simply wants to be like everyone else, and through this surreal odyssey learns that he never will be, and he's okay with that. A journey of self-acceptance, really, when you think about it. Anyways, he leads the cow revolution and kills his mom by basically human centipeding his ass to her with duct tape and then her throat. This book had me question what the point of fiction even was, and how do we even define art? Could this be art? I guess, yeah. Do I like it? No. I don't at all. I'd say Cows firmly deserves its number 8 spot on the list. Those of you familiar with this type of endeavor probably know what this final book is going to be. It's literally the granddaddy of transgressive fiction. It's very well known. The author's name is the origin of the word sadism. But I'm going to confess to you all, after 4 years of slowly working my way through these books, I ultimately failed this challenge. I could not force myself to finish this book. I read about a quarter, then skimmed the rest of it. I saw no purpose in it. I saw time slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. I reckoned with my mortality. No, I said, I will not waste another second reading this, but I will share with you all I learned plunging into what is, without a doubt, the most disturbing book I have ever tried to read. At number 10 on the list, the Marquis de Sade died in 1818. He lived through the French Revolution. He was imprisoned for life, a nobleman notorious for the real-life terror he inflicted upon others. This book, written while he was imprisoned in the Bastille, is the most disgusting thing I have ever read. Did you know there's a Penguin Classics version of this now? Maybe don't check it out after you finish Count of Monte Cristo. Mind you, for most of history, this book was illegal to own. It's a miracle that this book survived, that it was smuggled out of a prison famous for burning down, that it was never destroyed by those collectors and later researchers who owned it. Reading this book today feels like reading porn written by a serial killer. I'm just going to say that. I cannot emphasize enough how strange, demented, and outright pointless this novel feels, if it can even be called a novel. I'll link a Guardian article below that goes more into de Sade's life and the writing of this book. Here's a general outline. 4 upper-class gentlemen of great means convene at an isolated property, kidnapping and buying a huge number of young children, women, and men, in order to indulge in their most extreme perverted fantasies over the course of 120 days, culminating in acts of torture and murder. The book describes in detail every possible disgusting scenario, frequently involving human feces, vomit, farts. Men, women, children, anything was fuel to his rage, and at its bidding he performed excesses which would have got his head between block and blade 1,000 times over, were it not for the silver he distributed and the esteem he enjoyed, factors whereby he was 1,000 times protected. It's so strange reading this stuff in this classical, very proper language. I will say occasionally it is kind of funny. There would always be at hand 16 young men, ranging in age from 20 to 30, whose immense faculties permitted our 4 heroes in feminine guise to taste the most agreeable delights. De Sade is not hiding what he's trying to do here. He lists character descriptions for dozens of people, extensively describing their bodies, simply so, and he tells the reader this, we can focus on the fun scenarios without interruption. Thank you so much. Before advancing to the matter, it is essential that these articles of government be made known to the reader who, after the exact description we have given him of everything, will now have no more to do than follow the story, lightly and voluptuously, his mind impeded by nothing, his memory embarrassed by no unexpected intrusions. Here's an example of one of the bullet point character descriptions. The Duc de Blanges, 50, built like a satyr, endowed with a monstrous member and prodigious strength. He may be regarded as the depository of every vice and every crime. He has killed his mother, his sister, and 3 of his wives. This goes on and on. Every character described, down to the shape of their ass. None of this is narratively or emotionally gratifying. It's literally all in service of arousal. Take what you please and leave the rest alone. Another reader will do the same, and little by little, everyone will find himself satisfied. This book is insane, but it's also really boring. You can only read endless graphic details before your mind just drifts. The book is also unfinished. Half of it is an outline, stupidly describing insane scenarios of depravity. My question is this a work of literature? I guess objectively, yeah. Does it have artistic merit? I don't know. It comes across as a guy in prison writing down his sick fantasies. As a historical artifact, it is objectively fascinating. To read this type of writing at the same time George Washington was alive, that is wild. That's very strange. So there we have it. My project is over. What was I hoping to get out of this challenge, and what did I actually get? I think I was hoping to test myself to see how much darkness I could withstand or something. I don't think we're meant to see horror beamed into our brains constantly on the internet, yet how often do you randomly see a video auto-playing someone dying, right? We live in a media world saturated by violence and literature. Unlike in real life, we can indulge in the darkness. Some of these books were profoundly moving, and I intentionally picked a variety of extremes. Book that makes you cry, splatterpunk, anti-war novel, literary fiction, Cormac McCarthy, so that I could experience a range of human emotion. I would not read most of these without this challenge, and I also feel like most people would rather learn about these books than read them themselves. So really this is This is a public service.
Reading a disturbing book is a lot more difficult than watching a disturbing movie, and I've seen some disturbing movies, believe me. Books are so much more engaging, you can't really tune out and disassociate sentence to sentence, plus there's no special effects in your imagination, no fake blood, it all feels real. Regardless, the films that are the most quote-unquote disturbing to me have never been like conventional horror movies. Caché, Michael Haneke's movie, had me looking over my shoulder all day. Aguirre, The Wrath of God is one I always think about. As for emotional devastation, nothing hits me like The Deer Hunter, still, which if you haven't seen it is absolutely worth watching. De Niro, Christopher Walken, Meryl Streep, and one of her best performances. Danny Boyd, aka Cinema Sticks, has a new video about Meryl Streep's career on Nebula, a career which is a lot weirder than you might remember. I love Cinema Sticks, who creates some of the snappiest, sharpest video essays on this platform, and his new exclusive series on Nebula, Let's Rewind, covering beloved actors' careers, is just as good. That's how you do an expert transition, by the way. All of Cinema Sticks' videos, along with a ton of other exclusive content from your favorite creators, is available on Nebula. Nebula is the largest creator-owned streaming platform in the world. It's where all your favorite creators like Legal Eagle, Lindsay Ellis, Big and Little Joel, me, create exciting new content. There's such a variety of thoughtful and smart videos on Nebula. It's my go-to these days. When I sit down to watch TV, I usually watch Nebula before I check out HBO or anything else like that. If you sign up using my link at go.nebula.tv/mancarryingthing or use the link below, you can get Nebula for 50% off, which is $30 a year or $250 a month. You can also get a monthly plan for $6 a month or a lifetime plan for $300, which usually costs $500. And for those of you that want to share everything Nebula has to offer with your family and friends, Nebula is now offering monthly, annual, and lifetime gift cards. Use the link gift.nebula.tv/mancarryingthing to give a month of Nebula to a friend for just $6, a year for $30, or a lifetime membership for $300, which without my link costs $500. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for supporting the channel. Okay, bye-bye.